This city doesn't feel like the end of a journey. It feels like the moment you stop walking, look back once, and realize you're not sure if you're arriving or simply catching your breath. Amsterdam has that in-between energy. Not a final point, a pause, a soft landing. From the beginning, Amsterdam wasn't built to keep things inside. It was built to connect things outside. Water opens into other waters. Routes split and rejoin. Boats arrive, leave, arrive again. Even the city's layout feels like it's pointing outward, like it's always in conversation with somewhere else. That's why, when you step into Amsterdam, you don't get the feeling of, "I made it." You get the feeling of, "I could move from here." Like this place is not the destination, but the point where your path suddenly has options. And because it's been a crossroads for so long, the city carries a strange kind of belonging. People have been arriving here for centuries. Traders, workers, refugees, students, dreamers. When so many people arrive, the city learns something. It doesn't demand that you prove yourself. It just makes space for you to exist. Even today, the city still feels like it's made of movement. Tourists for days, newcomers for years, locals who've learned to share the same streets with people who are always slightly temporary. So Amsterdam doesn't feel owned, it feels shared. That creates a rare emotion. You might not feel like you fully belong, but you also don't feel judged for it. In many cities, being new makes you visible. Here, being new is normal. The city doesn't stare, it lets you pass. So Amsterdam becomes a kind of emotional transfer station. Not a place that grabs you and says, "Stay forever." A place that gently says, "Rest a little, reset, and when you're ready, keep going." At first glance, Amsterdam feels small. The streets are narrow. The buildings stay low. Nothing towers over you. Everything happens at eye level, as if the city is deliberately trying not to intimidate you. You notice it in the way people move. Faces are visible. Movements are readable. You don't disappear into the crowd. You remain human-sized. The city doesn't swallow you. It stays close. But something unexpected happens. Even though everything is tight and compact, you rarely feel trapped. Just when the streets start to feel narrow, the city opens a gap. A canal appears. Water stretches the view. The horizon breathes. These canals aren't just beautiful. They act like pauses, visual exits. They remind you that the city always leaves a way out. Not to escape the city, but to escape pressure. Then there's the movement. Bikes instead of engines. Pedals instead of horns. The city moves fast enough to function, but slow enough to feel safe. Speed exists here, but it never becomes aggressive. So Amsterdam creates a strange balance. Physically small, emotionally spacious. You're close to others, yet never crushed by them. It's a city that keeps you within reach, without closing in. That's why walking here feels different. You don't rush to escape the streets. You move through them calmly, knowing that at any moment the city will give you room to breathe. Amsterdam was never meant to be beautiful. It was meant to survive. This land was wet, unstable, and constantly threatened by water. Before aesthetics, there was one simple question. Can people live here at all? The canals weren't dug to impress anyone. They were dug to drain the land, control floods, and create something solid where nothing stable existed before. What looks poetic today began as a practical solution. Living here meant negotiating with water every day, not fighting it, not conquering it, learning where it could go and where it couldn't. The city grew through compromise. That's why nothing here feels excessive. Buildings stay narrow, streets stay efficient. Houses lean slightly, as if still adjusting. Every detail whispers the same idea. Space is precious. Balance is everything. Even beauty in Amsterdam feels unintentional. It's not designed to be admired. It's a side effect of things working well together. Engineering quietly turns into elegance. This creates a rare feeling. You're not overwhelmed by design. You're calmed by function. The city feels honest, like nothing is pretending to be more than it needs to be. Amsterdam isn't a masterpiece of imagination. It's a masterpiece of agreement between land and water, need and restraint, humans and their limits. Amsterdam doesn't display its history, it absorbs it. The past here isn't framed, highlighted, or turned into a spectacle. It sits quietly beneath your feet, woven into everyday life. Unlike cities that were rebuilt from ruins, Amsterdam was layered slowly. Old structures remained, new lives moved in. Time didn't erase what came before. It settled on top of it. You feel this most in the small details. A crooked house still standing. A narrow street unchanged. A name quietly engraved in the pavement. Easy to miss unless you're paying attention. The city doesn't demand remembrance. It doesn't force you to stop and look. But if you do stop, if you slow down, the weight of what happened becomes impossible to ignore. Here, memory is not monumental, it's atmospheric. You sense it in silence, in absence, in the way some spaces feel heavier than others, without explaining why. Old and new exist side by side, not in contrast, but in agreement. A modern cafe inside a centuries-old building doesn't feel strange here, it feels natural. Amsterdam doesn't say, "Look what I've been through." It quietly says, "I remember." And somehow, that feels heavier. Amsterdam is often called a city of freedom, but that freedom isn't loud. It isn't celebrated with slogans or symbols. It exists in something much quieter. The way people give each other space. Here, no one asks you to explain yourself. The city doesn't demand that you fit in, stand out, or prove who you are. You're allowed to exist without being examined. This feeling didn't come from idealism. It came from practicality. When people with different beliefs, habits, and lives kept arriving, the city learned one rule: let people be, or nothing works. So tolerance here doesn't feel like enthusiasm. It feels like calm agreement. You live your life, I live mine. We share the same street without colliding. Even things that might shock elsewhere blend into the everyday here. Not because they're glorified, but because they're no longer treated as spectacles. That creates a rare, emotional safety. You don't feel watched. You don't feel measured. You feel trusted to manage your own boundaries. In Amsterdam, freedom isn't something you're given. It's something that's already there, waiting for you to notice it. Amsterdam doesn't feel slow, but it never feels rushed. Time here doesn't sprint forward. It moves in cycles, like something that knows it will come back around. You notice it in the soundscape. No constant engines, no aggressive horns, just pedals turning, bells ringing, footsteps passing. Movement exists, but it stays human. The bicycle sets the rhythm. Not too fast, not too slow. Fast enough to live, slow enough to think. The city's tempo follows the turn of the wheel. Days here don't blur into chaos. Mornings, afternoons, evenings, each has its own weight. Work ends. Shops close. The city allows time to have edges. Waiting doesn't feel like wasted time. Sitting by the canal, standing at a crossing, watching bikes pass. These moments aren't interruptions. They're part of the rhythm. That's why stress doesn't fully take over here. You can move quickly if you want, but the city never pressures you to. Speed is optional. Balance is expected. Amsterdam doesn't teach you to slow down. It teaches you something harder. How to keep moving without losing yourself.